Hello, Sangha. Welcome to the Abbots Address. Today is Monday, October 19th, 2015. And today we'll continue the conversation about the principles of cordiality. We're on the fifth of six principles, and this one is centeredness. So in this principle, the Buddha holds up the fact of being centered, having equanimity, and being rooted in the present as being an absolute essential for cordiality and harmony in the Sangha. So this is, probably pretty obvious. It definitely ties in with the Eightfold Path and the practice of samadhi and so on. But I'd like to think about it in maybe a different way. Of course, on a personal level, if we are individually not centered and not present, then we're going to be much more likely to get pulled around by emotional reactivity and other kinds of things. And so the conversations and the communications within the community are going to be, less balanced and more difficult, obviously. So the more centered each one of us individually is as we engage in a difficult conversation or an exchange of ideas about how something should proceed, then obviously the more fruitful that conversation will be. The less rooted we are, the less centered we are, then the more susceptible to hysteria and all kinds of stuff, see. Now, sometimes there's room to be hysterical. I've been there, if that's where we really are, that's where we are. So that's part of being human. But on the whole, then, having a baseline of actually being present and being clear, being there, so to say, is, absolutely critical. Not only in when we're speaking and sharing ideas, but also when we're listening and hearing them. So there. Now, another way of thinking about this that's occurring to me is that there's a way of being centered as a community, not just being centered individually in our own practice, which I think, in fairness, is probably what the Buddha is relating to here, or we're thinking about. But I would assert that, it occurs to me that also there's a way that the community itself can be centered and can be rooted. And one of the ways that really shows up is in the liturgical expression of the community, the liturgical actions of the Sangha. And this is absolutely critical. It's one of the big sort of dividing lines between, say, just taking on a Dharma practice for the sake of peace of mind or improving one's golf swing or what have you. I mean, certainly you can do that. You can take a mindfulness approach, and you get benefit from it. I'm a fan. I think that's fine. But, or I should say, to be really centered and clear in the community, it goes from just being an individual's Dharma practice to something that happens in the Sangha, in community, see. And this is where it becomes religious. See, it's not just a spiritual thing, but it's actually a religious thing. And then to me, what I mean when I say that is it's a community thing. It's something that happens with other folks in a structured way. And so we encounter liturgy. See, and you might think, well, why would liturgies make the community centered? I mean, isn't that, I don't know how that relates. It becomes part of the collective experience of the Sangha, that this is how we invoke reality, as my first teacher used to say. Liturgical action is invoking reality. And there's a very real way in which our sound, when we come together in liturgical action, our way of using the body, moving through space and caring for each other and making the liturgical action actually happen, it's a very deep form of practice and a deep form of training. It's essential, in my view. It's certainly not the only thing, but it's one of the things that's essential. And it tends to show up for us in moments that we really need it to be there, and we're really grateful to have it. So, for example, this last weekend, towards the end of last week, the temple received a communication from a member of the general public, someone who's not a regular member of the community of the Sangha, And they said, look, my mom is dying. My mom is in hospice. An illness has suddenly presented, and it's moving swiftly and terribly, and the diagnosis is terminal. And this person had self-identified as Buddhist and had visited the temple a time or two. Can you do something? You know, it's my mom's passing wish to have some Buddhist event for her passing. And so we responded. The Sangha is here to respond to the imperative that arises when we can and how we can. And so in this case, Doan Osho, Reverend Doan, she went with a few jisha, some attendants who volunteered to be a part of this, and other community members from the Sangha went, and they performed a ritual action of giving this deceased person refuge and the precepts and so on in a way that's in alignment with our tradition. And it's a kind of an example of a way of holding the space and making a way for us to actually be in this moment as it is and to mark it. In this case, a solemn and sorrowful moment to be marked. But these things are very important for us as people, to be able to acknowledge things as they happen, to be able to bless, to be able to let go, to be able to embrace. These are liturgical moments. They can be. So I'd advise all of us to really think about, you know, the liturgical practices that we share together at the temple as not just something that you do yourself and see what you get out of it. That's fine. But think about it as this is the sound of our community. This is the practice of togetherness. It's a way, again, of invoking reality as a community. And I'll tell you, I've been doing those kinds of liturgical actions since I was a teenager, in my case, when I first encountered the Dharma. And they're there for me, and I'm really grateful for that. The smell of the incense and the bells and the robes and the chants and all of this, in a certain way, you can say it's irrelevant and has nothing to do with the Dharma, and I can go there with you if I want to. But in another way, it's really critical, and I'd rather stay there. It's a way of centering the community, tying us in a gracious way with our ancestors in the lineage, a way of making the traditions speak and sing today, and to be right there for you and for me and for all of us when we need it most. So take up liturgy and take it up as centeredness in the community. And of course, our own individual concentration and jariki and all of this is right in the center of the target. So I hope everybody has a good week. Thank you for listening to the Abbots Address. Tons of good stuff happening in the community, and I'm just tickled to be a part of it. Thank you, everybody.